At that company party, I reached out to touch my husband's arm. Nothing dramatic, just a small gesture, my fingertips barely grazing his sleeve, a quiet reminder that we were still connected, that we were still us. But Mason jerked away so violently my champagne glass nearly slipped from my other hand. The liquid sloshed against the rim, a single drop landing on my dress like a stain I couldn't ignore. "Don't touch me." He didn't whisper it. He didn't pull me aside. He snapped those 3 words loud enough that conversations around us stuttered and died. Heads turned. Eyes found me. And in that moment, standing under the cold neon glow of Skyline Lounge, I felt something inside me crack open. His sister Sienna appeared at my elbow within seconds, her hand gentle on my shoulder, her smile painted with pity. "Bad night?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the music. I smiled back, but there was nothing soft about it. My teeth showed, my jaw was tight. "Last one, actually." She blinked, confused, but I was already turning away, already deciding. By morning, I was gone. No screaming match, no thrown plates or slammed doors, just a note on the kitchen counter and a silence I'd been carrying for far too long finally breaking open into something I could no longer ignore. But before I tell you how I left, I need you to understand how I stayed. How I convinced myself for 12 years that marriage meant endurance. That love meant bending until you couldn't recognize your own shape anymore. My name is Lara Quinn, and this is the story of how I fell apart before I finally learned to put myself back together. The party had been going for an hour when I arrived. Mason hadn't waited for me. He never did anymore. He'd left early, claiming he needed to network, to make an impression, to be seen with the right people. I'd learned to accept these excuses the way you accept weather, something you can't control, something that just happens. Silver Peak's annual holiday party was always extravagant. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Denver, a live DJ spinning tracks that were just loud enough to drown out real conversation, bartenders mixing drinks that cost more than our weekly grocery bill. Everyone looked polished, everyone looked successful, everyone looked like they belonged. I didn't. I spotted Mason across the room, surrounded by colleagues I'd met maybe twice. His posture was different, straighter, more confident. He laughed at something someone said. His head tilted back, his smile wide and genuine in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months, maybe years. I made my way through the crowd, weaving between clusters of people holding wine glasses and talking about quarterly earnings and market projections. When I finally reached him, I touched his waist. Just my hand against the fabric of his suit jacket. Just a connection. He flinched like I'd burned him. "Don't touch me." The words hit harder than the volume, harder than the eyes that turned toward us, harder than the sudden silence that bloomed in our immediate circle. I forced a smile, the kind of smile that holds everything in, the kind that keeps you from shattering in public. "Sorry," I heard myself say, though I didn't know what I was apologizing for. Mason's jaw tightened. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, through me, like I was an obstacle between him and something better. Standing next to him was Ryder Slate. Tall, lean, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. He worked in Mason's department, though I'd only met him once before at another work function. There was something about the way he stood next to my husband. Too close, too familiar, like they shared a language I wasn't fluent in. Ryder's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Something smug, something knowing. I felt Sienna's hand on my arm before I saw her. She guided me away gently, her voice low and careful. "You okay?" I nodded because speaking felt impossible. Because if I opened my mouth, something might come out that I couldn't take back. "Bad night?" she asked again, her eyes searching mine. That's when I felt it. The shift, the breaking point, the moment when staying became more painful than leaving. "Last one, actually," I said, and I meant it. I didn't stay much longer. I made an excuse about a headache, about needing air, about anything that would get me out of that room. Mason didn't follow me. He didn't even look up when I left. The drive home felt longer than usual. The house in Highlands Ranch sat dark and empty when I pulled into the driveway. I sat in the car for a long time, engine off, hands still gripping the steering wheel. the silence pressed against my ears. Inside, everything looked exactly as I'd left it: clean counters, folded blankets, picture frames arranged just so. It was the kind of house that looked perfect in photos but felt hollow when you lived in it. I heard Mason's car pull up an hour later. The garage door rumbled open, then closed. His footsteps were heavy on the hardwood floor. He walked past me without speaking, heading straight for the bedroom. I followed. He gathered his clothes, his movements sharp and deliberate, then headed for the bathroom. That's when I heard it, the sound that changed everything. Click. The bathroom door locked. In 12 years of marriage, Mason had never locked a door. Not once. We'd built a home on openness, on shared space, on the idea that we had nothing to hide from each other. That small metallic click echoed in the silence like a gunshot. I stood outside the door, listening to the water run, listening to him move around in a space that suddenly felt forbidden. My heart pounded against my ribs. My hands felt cold. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while, and I'd been too afraid to name it. When he finally emerged, hair wet, skin flushed from the heat, he walked past me again without meeting my eyes. He climbed into bed, turned away from me, and within minutes his breathing had evened into sleep. I lay awake next to him, staring at the ceiling, feeling the vast distance between our bodies, even though we were only inches apart. The next morning I did what I always did. I made coffee, I folded laundry. I moved through the house like a ghost haunting her own life. Mason left early for work without saying goodbye. I stood in the bedroom, staring at the pile of his clothes I'd gathered for washing. That's when I saw it, shimmering faintly on his collar. Makeup. Champagne-colored highlighter dust that caught the light when I tilted the fabric. I never wore that shade. I barely wore makeup at all. My hands started shaking. I set the shirt down carefully, like it might explode if I handled it too roughly. Then I picked up his gym bag to toss in a towel. Something hard knocked against my knuckles. A phone. Not his iPhone. Not the one I'd seen him use 1,000 times. This was different. Older. A basic model with a cracked screen protector. My pulse hammered in my ears as I powered it on. No passcode, no security, just a bright screen and a string of messages that made my stomach drop. Room 519. Same place. I want you tonight. Can't wait to see you. The messages went back weeks. Different days, different times. Always the same tone, always the same hunger. I sat down on the edge of the bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I read through every message twice, then a third time, trying to find some alternate explanation, some innocent reason why my husband had a secret phone filled with messages that sounded like love letters. But there was no innocent explanation. I thought about confronting him. I imagined the scene. Me holding up the phone, him scrambling for excuses, the anger, the denial, the tears. But something stopped me. I needed to know more. I needed proof that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made any moves. So I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. I finished the laundry. I made dinner. And when Mason came home that evening, I smiled and asked about his day like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I just needed time to figure out how deep the lie went. I called Sienna the next afternoon. We met at a small cafe in the Lodo district, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture that tried too hard to look casual. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw my face. We'd known each other for over a decade. She'd been in our wedding. She'd helped me pick out furniture for our first apartment. She was Mason's sister, but she'd become my friend too. Or so I'd thought. "What's going on?" she asked as soon as we sat down. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into the dark liquid. Mason's been different lately. Different how? Distant, cold, like he's somewhere else, even when he's sitting right next to me. Sienna didn't respond immediately. She kept stirring her own coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Sienna," I said quietly, "if you know something, please tell me." She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them again, they were glossy with tears she was trying not to shed. "Ryder," she whispered. "Ryder influences Mason more than you think." The name landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. ripples spreading outward, disturbing everything. What do you mean? I asked, though part of me already knew. Part of me had known since that moment at the party when I saw them standing too close, looking too comfortable. They've gotten close. Really close. They work late together. They meet up outside of office hours. They... She trailed off, shaking her head. People at Silver Peak have noticed. I've noticed. My throat felt tight. How long? Months. Maybe longer. I don't know exactly. Mason doesn't talk to me about it, but I see things. I hear things. She finally looked at me, and the guilt in her expression was almost worse than the information itself. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. I kept hoping I was wrong. I nodded slowly, mechanically. What else? She hesitated, then spoke so quietly I almost didn't hear her. Mason told me he wants to start over, start fresh. Without... She couldn't finish the sentence. Without burdens, I finished for her. She nodded. Tears finally spilling over, I sat back in my chair, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not shock, not anger, just a terrible, clarifying understanding. He meant me. I was the burden. I drove up to Lookout Mountain alone that evening. The road curved and climbed, the city spreading out below me in a blanket of lights. I parked at an overlook and sat there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt too beautiful for what I was feeling. My phone rang. Jillian, Mason's mother. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Lara, she said, her voice crisp and controlled. We need to talk. About what? About Mason. About what he needs right now. She paused, and I could hear her taking a breath, preparing her words like ammunition. He needs space. He needs room to grow, and I think you should give him that. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and bitter. You're calling to tell me to give my husband space? I'm calling to tell you not to hold him back. He has opportunities right now. Important opportunities. And he needs to be able to focus without complications. Complications, I repeated. Is that what I am? Don't twist my words, Lara. I'm trying to help you both. Mason is under a lot of pressure. He's working with people who can change his career trajectory. Ryder has been an incredible mentor for him, and... Ryder, I interrupted. You're talking about Ryder. There was a pause. A telling pause. Yes, Ryder is helping Mason reach his full potential. As long as no one drags him down, he'll rise fast. The implication was crystal clear. I was the one dragging him down. I was the obstacle, the complication, the burden. Is that what Mason told you? I asked. My voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. Mason doesn't need to tell me anything. I'm his mother. I know what's best for him. I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the steering wheel to steady them. They knew. His family knew. They'd known all along, and instead of warning me, instead of helping me, they'd chosen his side. They'd already decided I was the problem. That night, I opened the secret phone again. Another message had come through. Don't let anyone find out about us. The words made my skin crawl. Whoever was sending these wasn't just involved with Mason. They were actively hiding it. They knew it was wrong. They knew it would destroy things. And they didn't care. I sat on the edge of our bed, the phone feeling heavy in my hands, like it carried the weight of every lie Mason had ever told me. The screen glowed in the darkness, casting shadows across my face. I scrolled up through the conversation history, watching months of deception unfold in blue and gray text bubbles. Pet names I'd never heard him use, inside jokes I wasn't part of. Plans made in stolen moments while I was probably cooking dinner or folding his laundry or waiting for him to come home. Each message felt like a small knife cutting into something I didn't know could still hurt. There were good morning texts sent while Mason was supposedly in the shower getting ready for work. There were late-night confessions typed out while he lay next to me in bed, his back turned, his body a wall between us. There were promises about a future that didn't include me, plans being made for a life I had no place in. I took screenshots of everything. Every message. Every timestamp. Every careless word that proved this wasn't just an affair, it was a relationship. Something sustained and deliberate. something that had been growing in the shadows while I convinced myself our marriage was just going through a rough patch. My hands trembled as I organized the photos into a hidden folder on my phone. Evidence. Proof. The undeniable truth captured in pixels and metadata. I labeled each screenshot with dates, created a backup file, then sent copies to my email account just in case. I wasn't taking any chances. I wasn't going to let him gaslight me or make me question what I'd seen with my own eyes. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, buried beneath gym clothes and protein powder in his bag. I made sure the screen was locked the same way, positioned at the same angle. Mason couldn't know I'd found it. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. I lay back down in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through scenarios and possibilities. I thought about confronting him right then, waking him up and demanding answers. But I knew how that would go. He'd deny it. He'd minimize it. He'd turn it around on me somehow, make me the villain for invading his privacy, for not trusting him, for being insecure and paranoid. I'd seen him do it before with smaller things. A missed call from a number I didn't recognize, a charge on our credit card he couldn't quite explain. He had a way of making reality feel negotiable, of making me doubt my own instincts until I apologized for even asking. Not this time. This time I needed something he couldn't twist or explain away. I needed evidence that would hold up not just in an argument, but in court if it came to that. I needed witnesses, documentation, a paper trail he couldn't burn. I couldn't confront Mason without proof. I couldn't accuse him of something he could deny or twist into my paranoia. I needed evidence that was undeniable, evidence that would hold up if this turned into something legal. I needed help. Von Reddick's office was in Cherry Creek, tucked into a nondescript building between a yoga studio and a tax attorney's office. The waiting room was small and quiet, with outdated magazines and a water cooler that hummed too loudly. When he called me back, I followed him into a cramped office lined with filing cabinets and stacks of manila folders. He was older, maybe mid-50s, with gray hair and tired eyes that had probably seen every variation of human betrayal. "Tell me everything," he said simply. So I did. I told him about the party, the locked bathroom door, the makeup on the collar, the secret phone, the messages, Sienna's confession, Jillian's phone call. I laid it all out like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve on my own. Vaughn listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me for a long moment. "If what you're describing is real," he said carefully, "this won't take long to confirm." His certainty scared me more than anything else. Because it meant I wasn't paranoid. It meant my instincts were right. "How long?" I asked. "A week. Maybe less." I nodded, feeling something shift inside me. This was real now. This wasn't just suspicion or fear. This was the beginning of something I couldn't take back. "One more thing," Vaughn said as I stood to leave. "Whatever I find, it's going to hurt. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I met his eyes. "I'm already hurting. At least this way, I'll know the truth." 3 days later, Vaughn called. "I have what you asked for," he said. "You should come in." My hands shook the entire drive back to his office. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, trying to steady myself against the flood of emotions threatening to drown me. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every turn brought me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I parked crooked in the lot, my car taking up 2 spaces, and had to force myself to walk inside instead of running. The receptionist offered me water. I declined. My stomach was already churning, and I didn't trust myself to keep anything down. I sat in that small waiting room, surrounded by outdated magazines and the hum of fluorescent lights, counting my breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth, trying to prepare myself for whatever was coming. When Vaughn finally called me back, his expression told me everything before he said a word. This wasn't going to be good news. This wasn't going to be a misunderstanding I could laugh about later. Vaughn didn't waste time. He slid a manila envelope across his desk, the paper thick and official looking. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were photographs. The first one hit me like a physical blow. Mason and Ryder walking into the Aspen Crest Hotel together, their shoulders brushing, Mason laughing at something Ryder said, his face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. That smile, the one I'd fallen in love with back when we were young and stupid and thought love could fix anything, was directed at someone else. Someone who wasn't me. I flipped to the next photo, even though every instinct screamed at me to stop looking. This one showed them in the elevator, Ryder's hand resting on Mason's lower back. The gesture was casual, intimate, familiar, the kind of touch that only comes from repetition, from knowing someone's body well enough to navigate it without thinking. My vision started to tunnel. The edges of the photograph went fuzzy, but the center remained sharp and cruel. Mason's expression in that elevator was relaxed, comfortable. He looked like a man going somewhere he wanted to be, with someone he wanted to be with. The last photo showed them leaving the hotel the next morning. Early sunlight, rumpled clothes, and Mason was wearing Ryder's shirt. The blue button-down I'd never seen before, slightly too big in the shoulders, untucked and wrinkled. The kind of detail that told the whole story without needing words. I stared at that image until it blurred, until my eyes burned, until I couldn't tell if I was breathing anymore. "There's more," Vaughn said quietly, his voice cutting through the ringing in my ears. He turned his laptop toward me. Security footage from the hotel hallway, time-stamped, dated. The grainy black and white video showed Mason and Ryder entering a room together at 11:47 p.m., the door closing behind them. Vaughn fast-forwarded through the night, the timestamp spinning through hours. No one leaving until 7:23 a.m. the next morning. 7 hours. They'd spent 7 hours together in that room while I was at home, probably lying awake, wondering where my husband was, probably texting him goodnight, probably convincing myself he was just working late again. "They've been doing this for months," Vaughn continued, pulling up a spreadsheet on another screen. Dates, times, hotel names, a pattern stretching back further than I'd imagined. Same hotel, sometimes the same room. They don't even try to hide it. They act like they don't care who sees. The casualness of it, that's what destroyed me. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a drunken impulse. This was routine, scheduled, as normal to them as grocery shopping or Sunday brunch. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring at proof of something I'd known but hadn't wanted to believe. "There's one more thing," Vaughn said, his voice gentle now, like he was breaking bad news to a child. Ryder Slate was fired from his previous firm for an inappropriate relationship with a married male colleague. It's on his employment record. Sealed, but I have contacts. My head snapped up. "Mason isn't his first?" "No, he has a pattern." That single sentence broke something open inside me. Mason wasn't special. He wasn't the love of Ryder's life. He was just the latest mark, the newest conquest. And he was too blind to see it. When I got home that evening, Mason was already there. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, completely relaxed, completely unaware. I stood in the doorway watching him. This man I'd spent 12 years with. This man I'd built a life around. This stranger. "We need to talk," I said. He glanced up, mildly annoyed. "About what?" "About where you've been. About who you've been with." His expression didn't change. "I've been working, Lara. Same as always." "Working," I repeated. "At the Aspen Crest Hotel?" Now his face shifted, just slightly, just enough to confirm what I already knew. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos. Him and Ryder entering the hotel, his hand on Ryder's shoulder. Mason stood up fast, his face going pale. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter? You had me followed?" His voice rose, indignant, angry, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "You're cheating on me, Mason. It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out, because there was no explanation that would make this okay. No excuse that would erase what I'd seen. "Is it Ryder?" I asked, though I already knew. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "How long, Lara, how long have you been sleeping with him?" 6 months, he whispered finally. "Maybe longer. I don't know." 6 months. Half a year. All those late nights. All those work trips. all those times he'd pulled away when I tried to touch him. Why? I asked, and I hated how broken my voice sounded. He ran his hands through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. That's not an answer. I don't know what you want me to say, Laura. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry it happened this way, but I can't change how I feel. How you feel, I repeated slowly. You're in love with him. He didn't deny it. I felt something inside me finally break. Not shatter, not explode, just quietly, completely break. I want a divorce, I said. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Relief. He wanted this. Maybe he'd wanted it for months. Maybe that's why he'd been so careless. Maybe he'd been hoping I'd find out so he wouldn't have to do the hard part himself. Okay, he said softly. That was it. No fight, no argument, no attempt to save what we'd built. Just okay. I moved into the guest room that night. Mason didn't try to stop me. I dragged my pillow and a blanket down the hallway while he sat on the couch, pretending to watch television. He didn't look up, didn't ask where I was going or why. The silence between us had grown so thick, it felt like a physical presence in the house, something dark and suffocating that followed me from room to room. The guest room was small and sterile, decorated with furniture we'd bought for visitors who rarely came. I lay awake on the unfamiliar mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere down the hall, Mason's phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. I wondered if it was Ryder. I wondered if Mason was smiling at whatever message he was reading. I wondered how I'd spent 12 years sleeping next to someone I didn't really know at all. The next morning, I called Amelia Shore, a divorce attorney whose name Vaughn had given me. Her secretary scheduled me for that same afternoon. Something about the urgency in my voice must have conveyed the desperation I was trying so hard to hide. I drove to her office in downtown Denver, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in days. Something about making the appointment, about taking action instead of just absorbing pain, had shifted something inside me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing to fight. Her office was sleek and professional, all glass and steel and confidence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, giving the space an almost intimidating sense of power. Amelia herself was exactly what I needed. Sharp eyes, perfectly tailored suit, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never lost a battle in her life. She listened to my story without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad with quick, efficient strokes. I told her everything. The party, the locked bathroom door, the secret phone, the hotel receipts, Vaughn's photographs, Jillian's phone calls where she basically admitted the family knew, Sienna's guilty confessions, the bank transfers I'd discovered. Every painful detail spilled out of me like water from a broken dam. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with sharp, assessing eyes that seemed to see straight through to my bones. You have proof of adultery. You have financial misconduct if he's been using marital funds for these hotel stays. And you have witnesses who can testify to his attempts at character assassination. She ticked each point off on her fingers like she was building a case right there in front of me. What does that mean for me? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. It means you file first, you control the narrative, you show the court exactly who initiated this dissolution and why. She leaned forward, her gaze intense and unwavering. You're not in a marriage anymore, Laura. You're in a war, and you need to fight like it. Her words landed hard. They stripped away the last remnants of the fantasy I'd been clinging to, the idea that maybe we could work this out, maybe we could talk through it, maybe love would be enough to fix what was broken. But they also lit something inside me, something that had been dormant for too long, something fierce and determined that had been buried under years of compromise and patience and swallowing my own needs to keep the peace. I sat up straighter in my chair. I met her eyes without flinching. For the first time since that night at the company party, I felt like myself again, not the diminished version of me that Mason had slowly created. But the woman I'd been before, I learned to make myself smaller to fit inside someone else's life. I wasn't a victim. I was someone who'd been wronged, and I had every right to fight back. Let's do it, I said. Over the next week, I gathered everything. bank statements showing hotel charges, credit card receipts, the secret phone with its damning messages, Vaughn's photographs and video footage, recorded phone calls with Jillian where she all but admitted she knew about the affair. I built a case brick by brick, piece by piece, until the evidence was undeniable. Mason had no idea. He walked around the house like everything was normal, like we were just going through a rough patch. Like this would blow over. He didn't know I'd already filed. He didn't know Amelia had frozen our joint accounts. He didn't know his employer was about to be notified of his inappropriate relationship with a subordinate colleague. He didn't know anything. And that's exactly how I wanted it. The day I served him the papers, I made sure I was home. I wanted to see his face. The process server arrived at 6:47 p.m. Mason answered the door, expecting a package. Instead, he got a manila envelope that would change his life. I watched from the kitchen as he opened it, as he read the first page. As the color drained from his face, he looked up and found me standing there. "You filed?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" I almost laughed. "The same reason you didn't tell me you were sleeping with Ryder. Sometimes secrets are strategic." He stepped toward me, papers clutched in his hand. "Lara, we can talk about this. We can figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." "This is insane. You're being unreasonable." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings. His voice, clear and unmistakable, talking to Ryder about dividing our assets after the divorce. His face went white. "You recorded me?" "I documented the truth. There's a difference." He looked at the papers again, reading further. I watched him reach the part about the frozen accounts, the part about the evidence of adultery, the part about Silver Peak being notified. "You're trying to ruin me," he whispered. "No, Mason, you ruined yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it." That night, Sienna called. Her voice was frantic. "Mason showed up here. He's losing it, Lara. He broke a lamp. He's screaming about how you betrayed him. Mom is talking about getting a lawyer to fight you." "Let them fight," I said calmly. "I have 12 years of evidence. They have excuses and lies." "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm better than I've been in years." And I meant it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Not the woman who bent and compromised and swallowed her pain to keep peace, but the woman who knew her worth and refused to settle for less. A week later, Silver Peak suspended Mason pending an internal investigation. Ryder, in a move that surprised no one, immediately distanced himself. He submitted a legal statement claiming Mason had pursued him, that he'd tried to maintain professional boundaries, that he was the victim in all of this. Mason called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer once. Jillian tried to arrange a family meeting to pressure me into dropping the divorce. I declined. Sienna told me later that the meeting happened anyway, and it devolved into chaos when everyone started blaming each other for not stopping this sooner. I didn't care. Their dysfunction wasn't my problem anymore. I packed up the house slowly, carefully. Each item I placed in a box felt like shedding weight, like removing armor I'd been wearing so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my skin. On my last day in Highlands Ranch, I walked through the empty rooms one final time. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel nostalgic. I felt free. I left my keys on the kitchen counter next to my wedding ring and a small note that said simply, "Thank you for helping me remember my worth." My new apartment in Boulder was small, a one-bedroom on Pearl Street with big windows and hardwood floors that creaked when you walked. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't impressive. But it was mine. I sat on the floor that first night, surrounded by boxes, eating takeout straight from the container. No one to impress, no one to perform for, just me and the quiet hum of my own thoughts. Sienna visited a few days later. She brought wine and apologies and a promise that she wanted me in her life even if Mason didn't. "I should have told you sooner," she said for the 100th time. "You told me when you could," I replied. "That's enough." We sat on my tiny balcony watching the sun set behind the mountains, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something close to peace. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Mason tried to fight for the house, for half of everything, for some semblance of control, but Amelia was relentless. She presented every piece of evidence, every lie, every manipulation. The judge wasn't sympathetic. I got the house. I got the majority of our assets. I got my life back. Mason got Ryder, at least for a little while. Last I heard, Ryder had moved on to someone new, someone younger, someone with more to offer. Mason called me once after that, late at night, drunk and rambling. He said he was sorry. He said he'd made a mistake. He said he wished he could take it all back. I listened to the whole message, then deleted it. Some apologies come too late, some damage can't be undone. I stand by my window now, months later, watching the lights of Boulder twinkle in the valley below. I think about the woman I was a year ago, the woman who stayed quiet, who accepted crumbs, who believed that love meant enduring pain. That woman is gone. In her place is someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who knows that the greatest act of love is sometimes walking away. I don't know what comes next. I don't have a plan or a roadmap or a guarantee that everything will work out. But for the first time in 12 years, my life belongs to me. My choices are my own. My future is unwritten. And that uncertainty doesn't scare me anymore. It feels like freedom. My name is Laura Quinn. I survived a marriage that almost destroyed me. And on the other side of that survival, I found something I thought I'd lost forever. Myself. If you're reading this, if you're listening, I want you to know something. You deserve a life that doesn't shrink you. You deserve love that doesn't demand you become smaller to fit inside someone else's comfort. And if you're in a situation where you feel invisible, where you feel like a burden, where you feel like you're the problem you're not, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave. Sometimes the greatest love story is the one you write for yourself. I'm still writing mine. One page at a time. One choice at a time. One breath at a time. And it's the best story I've ever told.